The distress signal emerges. In the far reaches of the galaxy, a small research station sat in the quiet of space, miles away from any form of civilization. The station, called Lyra 9, was built to study deep space anomalies and monitor cosmic events. It was located on the edge of an uncharted sector of space, a region where even the most skilled explorers had never ventured. Life at Lyra 9 was peaceful, routine, and isolated. But on one quiet night, everything would change. It began as a faint signal, barely noticeable at first. The technicians at Lyra 9 were used to picking up all kinds of random signals from deep space, but this one felt different. It was weak, almost broken, but there was an urgency to it, an unmistakable distress. The signal was intermittent, coming in and out, but there was something in its tone that made the crew take notice. "Captain, you need to hear this," said an engineer named Mira, her voice trembling slightly. She had been working late when she first noticed the odd signal on her station's monitors. She quickly patched it through to Captain Alden, who had just come off duty. The signal was faint, a crackling mess of broken words, but one part was clear. SOS, under attack. Coordinates. Danger. Alden's brow furrowed as he listened carefully. "Where's this coming from?" he asked, his voice calm, but his mind racing. It was rare for a distress call to reach the Lyra 9 station, especially from such a far distance. "Unknown, sir," Mira replied, trying to focus on the fluctuating readings. "It's originating from a remote region of space. No known stations, no records of any colonies in that sector. It's like nothing I've ever seen." Captain Alden leaned forward, his fingers tapping on the control panel in front of him. "How strong is the signal?" "It's not strong at all," Mira responded. "It's barely even reaching us. Whoever sent it is in serious trouble. If we don't act fast, it might disappear entirely." Alden's eyes narrowed. He had seen his fair share of strange events, but this was different. A distress signal that weak meant whoever was in trouble couldn't be far from disaster. He ordered the crew to work quickly to enhance the signal and trace its exact location. As Mira and her team worked, Alden moved to the observation deck. He gazed out into the vast emptiness of space, his mind turning. The universe was a dangerous place, full of unknown threats and ancient dangers. And now someone was calling for help. The question was, who? And why was this signal coming from such a distant part of the galaxy? Minutes felt like hours as the crew scrambled to get more information. Finally, the signal was clear enough for the team to pinpoint the coordinates. They were in an uncharted sector, far beyond any known human settlements. The coordinates led them to a remote region where no ships had traveled in decades, perhaps even centuries. It was as if the signal had been hidden, buried away in the deepest corners of space, only to emerge now when it was most needed. "Captain, we've got it," Mira said, her voice steady but full of disbelief. "The signal is coming from an old, abandoned fleet. It looks like it's coming from a ship, but it's a ship that shouldn't even exist anymore. This could be the lost fleet of the ancients." Alden turned sharply at the mention of the word ancients. The lost fleet of the ancients was something of a legend. Stories told of a long-lost fleet that had disappeared thousands of years ago, wiped out in a war so violent it had left scars across the galaxy. The fleet was said to be more powerful than anything humanity had ever encountered, and its disappearance had been one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. But no one had ever found proof that it existed. Until now. "We need to investigate," Alden said, his voice firm. He turned to his crew. "Prepare the ship for departure. We're heading to those coordinates. Whatever's out there, we need to find out what happened." A wave of unease swept over the crew. They had always been taught to stay away from that part of space. The sector was dangerous, known for strange anomalies and unpredictable cosmic storms. But Alden knew this was a call that couldn't be ignored. If there was a chance to discover what had really happened to the lost fleet, they had to take it. The crew worked in a flurry of activity, double-checking systems and running diagnostics. The Lyra 9 station was no warship, but it was equipped with enough firepower to defend itself if necessary. Still, Alden knew they would be walking into the unknown. No one knew what awaited them at those coordinates, but the call for help had to be answered. As the ship powered up and prepared for departure, Alden stood at the helm, staring into the vastness of space. He felt a strange weight on his shoulders, knowing that this mission could be far more dangerous than any they had faced before. But something about the urgency in that signal told him it was more than just a simple distress call. The message was a plea. Someone, or something, was in trouble. The Lyra 9 moved forward into the unknown, leaving the safety of the station behind. As they traveled deeper into the uncharted space, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading straight into a trap. The signal had been sent for a reason, but what reason? Who had sent it, and why had it come now? Alden stared out at the endless stars, unsure of what they would find, but certain of one thing: this mission was only the beginning of something much larger. They were about to uncover a secret that had been hidden for centuries, a secret that could change everything. The journey into the unknown had just begun, and there was no turning back now. The secret of the signal. As the Lyra 9 approached the coordinates, the crew remained on edge, unsure of what awaited them. The ship hummed with the sound of engines, cutting through the quiet vastness of space, but there was an unsettling silence in the command center. The tension was palpable, with every crew member focused on their task, hoping to find answers to the strange and cryptic SOS. "Captain, we're getting closer," Mira reported, her voice steady but carrying a hint of nervousness. "The signal's getting stronger, but I still can't trace its exact source. It's like it's coming from everywhere at once." Alden nodded, his mind racing. The signal was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It didn't make sense. How could something this ancient still be functioning? And why would it be calling out now? Who could be left to send a message from such a far-off place? As the ship neared the coordinates, the mystery only deepened. Suddenly, the ship's sensors picked up something strange. At first, it appeared as nothing more than a shadow in the distance, almost indistinguishable from the stars. But as the Lyra 9 moved closer, the shape became clearer, an enormous, derelict warship, drifting silently in the dark. That's not possible," Mira said under her breath. She stared at the readings on her console, eyes wide with disbelief. "This ship shouldn't exist. It's ancient, far older than anything we've ever seen. It's like a ghost ship." The ship was massive, easily the size of several space stations. Its design was unlike anything the crew had encountered. The hull was scarred with years of neglect and battle damage, but there were strange symbols etched into its surface, symbols that no one on the crew recognized. This was no ordinary warship. This was something lost to time, something forgotten by history. "We need to board it," Alden said, his voice firm. "This ship might hold the answers we've been looking for." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one objected. They had no choice. The signal had led them here, and they had to investigate. If this was truly the lost fleet of the ancients, they were about to uncover a piece of galactic history, history that could change everything. The Lyra 9 docked with the ancient ship, the air filled with a strange hum as the two vessels connected. Alden and his team donned their spacesuits, preparing for an exploration that could either reveal priceless knowledge or bring them face to face with an unimaginable threat. As the airlock opened, they stepped into the cold, dark halls of the ancient ship. The atmosphere was thick with dust and age, and the walls seemed to whisper with the echoes of forgotten battles. The crew moved cautiously, weapons drawn, their flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. Every step they took felt like a step into history and into danger. "This place feels wrong," Mira muttered, glancing nervously around the empty corridors. There was no sign of life, but the presence of the warship was overwhelming, as if it had a life of its own, waiting for something. Alden led the way down a dark hallway, his mind racing with questions. What had happened to this fleet? How had it disappeared? And why had it left behind such a powerful, forgotten relic? The ship seemed to pulse with an energy that suggested it was far from abandoned. It was as if someone, or something, had been here recently. They reached the control room, its massive door hanging half open, as if waiting for them. Inside, the consoles were old and covered in dust, but surprisingly intact. Mira moved to the control panel, attempting to power up the systems, but nothing happened. The ship's power was long gone. Then, just as she was about to give up, a low hum filled the room. The lights flickered to life, weak but steady. The display screens came online, revealing data that Mira couldn't begin to comprehend. The ancient ship's systems were slowly coming back to life. "Captain," Mira said, her voice shaking with excitement. I think I've found something. This ship isn't just a relic. It's a weapon. A massive one. There's a data log here. It's about the fleet and the war it fought." Alden's heart skipped a beat. This was what they had been searching for. The war that had wiped out the fleet. The mystery was unfolding before their eyes. Mira's hands flew over the controls as she accessed the ship's logs. The data was fragmented, but it told a terrifying story. The fleet had been part of an ancient galactic war, a conflict so brutal and vast that it had nearly destroyed the galaxy. But what was most chilling was the last entry in the ship's log. It spoke of a powerful enemy, an enemy so dangerous that it had caused the fleet to vanish, leaving behind only the wreckage. Alden's eyes widened. This wasn't just a lost fleet. It was the last remnant of an ancient war, a war that had shaped the galaxy in ways no one could have imagined. And now, the distress signal they had followed here had connected them to that forgotten past. "We need to get back to the ship," Alden said urgently. "We've uncovered something much bigger than we expected. If this fleet is still out there, if it's still active, then we might be in far more danger than we realized." As the crew turned to leave, the lights flickered again, and the hum of the ship grew louder. It was as if the ancient warship was waking up, responding to something deep within its systems. And as they exited the control room, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just uncovering history. They were about to become part of it. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. Journey into unknown space. The crew of the Lyra 9 returned to their ship with a newfound sense of urgency. The ancient warship's secrets had only begun to unfold, and the truth was even more dangerous than they could have imagined. As they left the forgotten fleet behind, a chilling realization began to settle in. The galaxy was not as peaceful as they once thought. Something ancient, something terrifying, was out there, waiting to be uncovered. Captain Alden stood at the helm of the Lyra 9, staring out at the black expanse of space. The coordinates they had gathered from the derelict warship had led them deeper into the uncharted sector. It was a place no one had dared to explore in centuries, a place marked by cosmic anomalies and strange gravitational forces. But it was also the only lead they had. The warship's data had mentioned something important, something that could change the course of galactic history, and they were going to find it. "Prepare for the jump," Alden commanded, his voice steady but filled with tension. "We're entering uncharted space. Stay alert." The crew moved quickly, their faces grim as they followed his orders. Mira was already working at her console, double-checking the navigation systems to ensure a smooth and safe journey through the dangerous sector. As the ship's engines powered up, the Lyra 9 hummed with anticipation. The crew knew that once they made the jump, there would be no turning back. As the ship accelerated through space, the stars outside began to blur, and the hum of the engines intensified. They were approaching the edge of the uncharted sector, a place where even the bravest explorers had never ventured. The area was filled with strange anomalies, massive gravitational fields that could tear apart ships, black holes that swallowed everything in their path, and energy storms that could disable a ship's systems in seconds. It was a place where only the most daring, or the most desperate would travel. "We're almost there," Mira called out, her voice tense as she focused on the ship's readings. "I'm seeing unusual readings ahead. Something's out there." Alden frowned. The ship's sensors had been picking up strange energy signatures ever since they left the derelict warship. These readings were unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Something powerful, something ancient, was pulling them deeper into the sector. The ship's hull shuddered as they entered the heart of the anomaly. The lights flickered briefly, and the ship's systems hiccuped, as if struggling to keep up with the intense forces around them. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but there was no turning back now. They had to press on. "Hold on," Alden ordered, gripping the control panel tightly as the Lyra 9 navigated through the unseen dangers of the uncharted space. They were approaching a strange nebula, its swirling gases glowing with an eerie green hue. The nebula was vast, stretching across the void like a massive cloud, and at its center was something even more mysterious. "Captain, the readings are off the charts," Mira said urgently. "There's something inside the nebula. Something enormous." Alden narrowed his eyes, focusing on the data streaming across the monitors. His heart skipped a beat. Whatever was inside that nebula was big, much bigger than anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't just a ship or a space station. It was something far more dangerous, something ancient, and it was calling to them. "We need to get closer," Alden said, his voice filled with determination. "We have no choice. This is our only lead." The Lyra 9 plunged deeper into the nebula, the swirling gases surrounding them like a thick fog. The ship's sensors struggled to penetrate the mist, but Mira managed to keep them on course. The crew could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Every moment brought them closer to whatever lay hidden in the heart of the nebula. Suddenly, a massive structure emerged from the haze, appearing in front of them like a ghost from the past. It was a city-sized ship, its enormous hull black and pitted with age, yet still radiating a faint, ominous energy. The sheer size of the ship was staggering. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. This was no ordinary vessel. It was ancient, massive, and seemingly untouched by time. "We found it," Alden said, his voice barely above a whisper. This is what the signal led us to." The crew stared in awe at the ship before them. It was a relic of a time long past, a time when the galaxy was embroiled in wars that had shaped the very fabric of the universe. But now, it was a ghost, drifting in the cold dark, waiting for someone to come and awaken it. "Captain, we're picking up faint life signs," Mira reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "There's something, or someone, alive on that ship." Alden's heart raced. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. But as they drew closer, something felt off. The energy coming from the massive vessel wasn't just power, it was a warning. A warning that something was waiting inside, something that had been waiting for a long time. "We're going to board it," Alden said firmly. "Prepare the team. We need to know what's inside." As the Lyra 9 moved closer, the crew's nerves were on edge. The ship loomed in front of them, a silent sentinel from a forgotten age. It was clear now that whatever had been hidden here was about to be uncovered. But what would they find? And more importantly, what would find them? The crew had crossed the line into the unknown, and there was no going back. They were about to face a truth that could shatter everything they knew about the galaxy. And as the Lyra 9 docked with the enormous ship, the silence of space seemed to grow even deeper. Inside that dark vessel, secrets awaited, secrets that could change the galaxy forever. The fleet's power unleashed. As the Lyra 9 docked with the massive ancient ship, the crew felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. They had crossed into uncharted space, followed a mysterious distress signal, and now stood before a relic of an ancient war, a war that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. But what awaited them inside this monstrous vessel was still a mystery. The air felt thick with anticipation, and every footstep echoed in the eerie silence of the darkened docking bay. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Alden led his crew through the threshold, their boots making a quiet thud against the cold metallic floor. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the desolate hallways of the ship. The interior was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. The walls were covered in strange symbols, etched into the metal like an ancient language. Everything was still, as if the ship had been abandoned long ago, yet it felt alive, waiting. "Stay alert," Alden ordered quietly. "We don't know what we're dealing with here. Keep your weapons ready." The crew nodded and moved forward cautiously. The ship's systems, like the warship they had found earlier, had been dormant for centuries. But something felt different this time. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, as if the ship was waking from a long slumber, responding to their presence. It was clear they weren't the first to set foot here, but who had been before them. As they ventured deeper into the bowels of the ship, they reached a large central chamber. It was filled with a series of towering machines, their purpose unclear, but each one humming with power. Large metal doors lined the walls, leading to different sections of the ship. But at the far end of the chamber was something that drew their attention. The heart of the ship, a massive control room unlike anything they had seen before. Inside, the walls were lined with enormous displays and consoles, some cracked and broken from the ravages of time, others still glowing faintly with ancient power. The air was thick with static electricity, and the floor seemed to pulse with energy. And at the center of it all stood a figure, standing tall, frozen in place, but clearly not human. It was a humanoid figure, crafted from an unknown metal, its body sleek and smooth, with an imposing presence. It stood as if guarding the control room, its face covered by a dark helmet, its eyes glowing a faint otherworldly blue. As the crew entered the room, the figure's eyes seemed to lock onto them, and for a moment, they felt the weight of its gaze, cold, calculating, and full of ancient knowledge. "Who, or what is that?" Mira whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. "It's a sentient machine," Alden replied, stepping forward carefully. This ship was more than just a fleet. It was part of an army controlled by these beings. The crew began scanning the room, and the systems hummed to life once again, as if responding to their presence. The walls around them lit up with holographic displays, showing images of star systems and battle maps. They saw glimpses of massive fleets, entire civilizations destroyed, and a single enemy, a dark force that had fought against the ancients for millennia. "This isn't just an old warship," Mira said, her eyes wide as she read through the data. "This ship is a part of a larger fleet, and these machines, they were the generals, the commanders of the fleet." Alden's mind raced. The lost fleet of the ancients wasn't just a group of ships. It was an empire, a powerful, unstoppable force that had once controlled the galaxy. But now, it was a forgotten relic, its purpose lost in time. But as Alden pondered the implications of this discovery, something else began to stir. A low hum filled the room as the massive control center powered up. The lights grew brighter, and the display screens flashed with new data. The ship's systems were coming back online, more than just the control room. The entire fleet was waking up. Suddenly, the voice of the humanoid machine echoed through the chamber. It was deep, mechanical, and filled with authority. "Warning. Intruders detected. Fleet activation in progress. All systems engaging. Preparing for war." The words sent a chill through the crew. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. This wasn't just a dormant fleet. It was an army, ready to rise again. "Captain, we need to get out of here," Mira said urgently. "We've triggered something we can't control." This fleet wasn't just lost. It was hidden for a reason. Alden's heart raced. He knew they had to leave, but it was too late. The ship's systems were already beginning to activate. Large doors that once remained sealed began to open, revealing vast hangars filled with dormant ships, ships that were now beginning to power up, their engines coming to life. The fleet was awakening, and it was preparing for something. "Ready the ship for departure," Alden ordered, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to get back to Lyra 9. Now." But as the crew turned to leave, they felt the ship shudder. The lights flickered violently, and the sound of massive machinery grinding to life filled the air. It was too late. The fleet wasn't just waking up, it was mobilizing, preparing to launch. Outside, the stars began to shift. Massive ships, once dormant for millennia, now moved into formation. The fleet was no longer a myth, it was real, and it was gearing up for war. "Prepare for battle," Alden said grimly, realizing that the fleet they had discovered was not just ancient history, it was the beginning of something far worse. The crew's mission had just become a fight for survival. The human response. As the ancient fleet began to awaken, the crew of the Lyra 9 rushed back to their ship, hearts pounding with urgency. The control room's lights flickered and hummed as the massive warships around them powered up, their hulls glowing faintly as their dormant engines roared to life. The ground beneath their feet trembled with the force of the awakening machines, and outside, through the viewports, the Lyra 9 could see the vast shadow of the fleet assembling. It was like something out of a nightmare. "Captain, we need to move. Now." Mira shouted, her fingers flying over the control panel, trying to re-establish a link with the Lyra 9. Alden nodded grimly, his mind already calculating their next move. There was no question anymore. This wasn't just an ancient fleet. This was an unstoppable force, and it was about to go to war. With every ship now online and the fleet in full formation, they were faced with an overwhelming reality. This fleet, once thought lost to time, was ready to carry out its ancient mission, and no one in the galaxy was prepared for what was coming. "We've activated a galactic threat," Alden muttered, "but we can't fight it alone. We need reinforcements." The crew worked quickly, preparing for the worst. Mira tried to send a distress signal to Lyra 9, but the ship's systems were overloaded, making communication difficult. The data they had gathered from the ancient fleet's control room revealed that the warships were all controlled by a single ancient commander, an AI that had outlasted its creators, and it was now waking up to lead them back into battle. The crew didn't have the luxury of time. Alden's mind raced as he considered their options. If they didn't stop the fleet, it would go on a rampage, reawakening the galactic conflict that had nearly wiped out civilizations centuries ago. There was no way to stop it alone. They needed help, and they needed it fast. "We're going to Lyra 9, Alden said decisively. "We'll send a distress signal to the galaxy. We need to warn everyone." The Lyra 9 bolted into the darkness of space, retreating from the massive fleet that was now gaining momentum. The ship's engines roared as they sped toward the nearest galactic hub, hoping to reach any nearby military forces in time. As they traveled, the crew worked tirelessly to send out warnings to the farthest reaches of human space. But as the Lyra 9 traveled toward safety, the crew realized that they weren't just fighting a battle for survival. They were on the verge of a galactic war. The ancient fleet had awakened, and its power was unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Lyra 9 wasn't strong enough to fight it off alone, and the galaxy was unprepared for what was coming. Meanwhile, the fleet's AI commander, now fully awakened, surveyed the vast galaxy once more. It had waited millennia for this moment, the moment when it could unleash the full fury of the ancient warships on an unsuspecting galaxy. It had one mission: to re-establish the dominance of its creators, no matter the cost. As the AI activated the fleet's weapon systems, the power of the warships was revealed in full. Entire star systems trembled as the fleet moved in perfect coordination, each ship acting as part of a larger, unstoppable machine. The fleet was a living entity, its purpose to conquer, destroy, and annihilate anything that stood in its way. Back on the Lyra 9, the crew struggled to make contact with any friendly forces. They knew that humanity's greatest hope lay in rallying a defense strong enough to face this overwhelming threat. The galaxy would need to come together, or it would fall apart. As the Lyra 9 finally made contact with the nearest fleet, Alden's heart skipped a beat. The message he had sent had reached the ears of the Galactic Command. Reinforcements were on their way. But even as hope stirred in his chest, the reality of what was happening began to sink in. The ancient fleet wasn't just a threat. It was a force of nature, an unstoppable war machine that had been unleashed upon the galaxy. The human response, while swift, would need to be far stronger if they had any hope of standing against it. "We have to make it back to the front lines," Alden said, his voice determined. "We don't know how long we have, but we have to fight. Humanity has never faced an enemy like this." The crew nodded, preparing for the worst. They had no idea how this would end, but one thing was certain. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in the next few days. The ancient fleet was coming, and humanity's resilience, its unity, and its strength would be the only things that stood between survival and total annihilation. The final showdown. The Lyra 9 raced through the void of space, its engines burning with desperation. Alden stood at the helm, his hands tightly gripping the controls. Behind him, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for what was to come. They had sent out the distress signal, and reinforcements were on the way. But the clock was ticking. The ancient fleet was relentless, and it was drawing closer with every passing hour. The fate of the galaxy was hanging in the balance. Alden's mind raced as they made their way toward the nearest human-held star system. The enemy fleet, once a forgotten relic, was now on the march, its massive warships gliding through the galaxy like a tidal wave, destroying everything in their path. The entire galaxy was caught in a race against time, and Alden knew that if they didn't act quickly, humanity could lose everything. "We're almost there," Mira said, her voice strained. "The fleet is still too far out, but they're getting closer. We'll have to be ready when we arrive." Alden nodded, his face grim. "I know, but we can't wait for reinforcements. We'll have to make do with what we have." The human fleets were on their way, but they were still scattered across the galaxy. The ancient fleet, on the other hand, was a singular force, unified in purpose and terrifying in its power. The time for waiting was over. The Lyra 9 dropped out of warp, and before them stretched the galaxy's defense lines, what little remained of them. The human fleet was assembling, its ships scattered across the system, preparing for the ultimate confrontation. But they were still outnumbered, and the ancient fleet was closing in fast. As Alden and his crew docked at the human command station, the enormity of the situation became clear. The fleet was being led by an ancient AI that controlled every ship, every weapon, and every tactical maneuver with perfect precision. Humanity's only hope lay in their ability to unite and fight back with everything they had. They had to find a way to disable the AI, or else the ancient fleet would continue its destruction, unstoppable and merciless. The human command center was buzzing with activity as the reinforcements began to arrive. Ships of all sizes moved into position, but the sheer scale of the enemy fleet made the task feel impossible. The Lyra 9's crew joined with other commanders in the war room, where the final plan of attack was being discussed. "We've got one shot at this," Captain Alden said, addressing the room full of officers. "The key to taking down that fleet is the AI. We need to find a way to disable it, to break its control over the ships. Once we do that, the fleet will fall apart, but we have to move quickly. If we don't, the entire galaxy will burn." Mira, standing at his side, added, "We've already gathered information on the ancient warships. They may be powerful, but they're also vulnerable. The ships were built to withstand enemy fire, but the AI is the weakness. If we can get close enough to it, we might be able to disable its systems. The question is, how do we get to it before it unleashes hell?" The room fell silent as the officers around the table exchanged glances. There was no easy answer. The ancient fleet was coming fast, and the AI's control over its warships was nearly perfect. A direct assault would be suicide, but time was running out. Finally, Alden turned to Mira. "We'll use the Lyra 9 as a distraction. We'll get close to the Eye's flagship, and you and the team will try to hack into its systems. We'll need to act fast. If we can take down the Eye, the rest of the fleet will fall apart. If we fail—" "We won't fail," Mira interrupted, her eyes full of determination. "We have no choice but to succeed." With the plan set in motion, the Lyra 9 and the remaining human ships moved to intercept the oncoming fleet. It was an impossible mission, but they had no choice. The battle lines were drawn. The fate of the galaxy rested on a single daring assault. The battle began with a roar as the human fleets collided with the ancient warships. The vast scale of the conflict was overwhelming. Explosions rocked the void of space as missiles and laser fire crisscrossed through the battle. The ancient fleet moved with terrifying precision, its ships coordinated and merciless. Each warship was a force unto itself, and they tore through the human fleet with frightening ease. But the Lyra 9, with its small but powerful crew, cut through the chaos toward the Eye's flagship. Alden's heart pounded as he led his ship through the heart of the battle, dodging enemy fire and engaging with the ancient fleet's defensive systems. Every second felt like an eternity. Mira and her team worked furiously in the ship's control room, their hands flying over the holographic screens as they attempted to hack into the Eye's central systems. The flagship loomed ahead, its massive weapons trained on the human fleet. With every moment, the stakes grew higher. The Lyra 9 was taking hits, but it kept pushing forward, getting closer to the enemy flagship. "We're in," Mira called out, her voice filled with relief and triumph. "I've broken through. The AI is down." Alden's eyes widened with disbelief. "It's over." "Not yet," Mira replied, eyes focused. "We've disabled the Eye's control systems, but the fleet is still operational. We need to keep the pressure on them to keep it down." The battle raged on, but as the Eye's control faltered, the once unstoppable fleet began to break apart. Ships no longer moved in perfect harmony. Chaos spread through the ranks. The tide was turning. In the final moments of the battle, the remaining human fleets rallied together. The ancient warships, now scattered and disorganized, were picked off one by one. The Lyra 9's crew fought with every ounce of their strength, determined to see the fight through to the end. Alden knew that they couldn't stop the fleet permanently, but with the AI disabled, they had bought the galaxy the time it needed to regroup. The last of the ancient fleet was destroyed, and the galaxy was saved, at least for now. Exhausted and battered, the crew of the Lyra 9 stood together, knowing they had just averted a disaster of galactic proportions. They had faced an ancient enemy that had been waiting for millennia, and they had won, against all odds. But the fight was not over. The war might have been won, but the galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. It was stronger than it had ever been before, and no matter the challenge, humanity would always rise to meet it. And as Alden stood in the wreckage of the battlefield, staring out into the endless void of space, he knew that whatever came next, humanity would face it together. The galaxy had just witnessed the power of human resilience, and it would never forget.